So yeah, I think we have now a really interesting panel because every one of you is disrupting an industry. And let's talk a little bit about why you're doing that, how you're doing that, and then the question, how do others react on actually what you're doing? So maybe, Eva, to start with you, you built an AI-powered venture capital fund to kind of really redefine how money is invested in companies. Maybe you explain a little bit about what you're doing and actually also why you did this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, first of all, because you were asking, right, what are, like, sort of, if you go into a new industry and you're a disruptor, what are the problems to some degree? And I think whenever you enter something with a disruptive new technology, you always have some sort of friction because you change the way things are being done, right? And in venture capital, I think we have an industry where for decades, capital has been allocated in a very manual, very, I would say, gut feeling driven way, right? So we have manual processes, we don't have any technology or data that we use specifically in early stage to invest. And the main idea we had when we started Morphais 2 years ago, and like we being myself and like a group of mathematicians and physicists, was how can we make use of the data and technology we have at hand to make better investment decisions, right, towards more accurate investment decisions, to manage risk at a higher degree, and also to generate access to capital. Because I think in Europe we have so much talent, entrepreneurial talent, but 90% of the deals that are being made by VCs are being made within their network. So we do not find the entrepreneurial talent outside of that network. And the question here is, how can we use technology to help us gain visibility to them, and then also to screen them and find the right entrepreneurs to invest into. So that's, yeah, I think a little bit of background. And I try to keep it short because we're such a big group.
No, we definitely come back to that. But maybe, Michele, because you're doing quite a similar topic, but with a very different approach. Way. Maybe you also explain a little bit of how you kind of approaching that venture capital market with what you're doing.
So I think we share the same goal, which is how to democratize access to capital for everyone. So 8 years ago, I was asked to join the Canadian version of it's Dragon's Den in the UK, it's Dragon's Den in Canada, it's Shark Tank or Lion's Den here, but it's a show where you invest in founders. And through that, I'm watching all these founders give up, 10, 20% of their companies in the early days for $100,000. And when you ask them what they needed the money for, it was always the same thing. It was, I need money for ads and I need money for inventory. And so it really didn't make sense that founders, for those use cases, were using the most expensive capital in the world, which was equity, to do something that really had a fixed return. So I remember on the show being like, look, why don't I give you that same 100,000 that you're looking for, and instead of taking 5 or 10% of your company that I'd own forever, I just want 5 to 10% of your revenue until you pay me back my capital plus 6%. The founder's like, oh, this sounds like a loan. I'm like, no, not a loan. If you didn't pay me back a loan, I would have a personal guarantee, which would be very punitive, or I would take your company. This is just a rev share designed for early startups. And I said, I need to see your ad data and your payment processor data so you're not lying to me. So that was actually the first deal that was maybe 3 or 4 years ago now. Today, Clearco has invested nearly $4 billion in over 9,000 different founders in 10 countries around the world. So it didn't turn out to be a small idea, it turned out to be quite a big one, where we really believe that no matter who you are, if your data shows that you have a great business, you should be able to get access to capital. And when we look back, we can see that in our stats. We've backed 25 times more women than the venture capital industry average. A third of our founders are BIPOC. A huge portion of our founders don't even have a post-secondary education. And so, I'm like you, I don't believe that VC was ever intended to be bad. It's just a human-to-human business where when you only know so many humans, you are naturally biased to choosing the ones that you went to school with and when you're in the right network. And so that's kind of how we're thinking about solving the problem.
I think it's a really cool idea, but I mean, coming from the Dragon's Den, do they still like you? Because I mean, I say
no. I think I would win every deal if I did a Clearco deal for anyone. I got to now play ball on the show and do some equity deals still.
Okay. So, well, and then the third here is Josh, and I think you have a very different story about how you got to disrupting an industry, and but still you're using technology to make something very much more accessible to people, which is legal advice. So what you're doing?
Yes, my company's mission is to replace all lawyers one day, starting with consumer rights. I'm not a lawyer by training. I got into this whole thing by accident. When I was a high school student in the UK, I got about 30 parking tickets, and I learned that if you know the right things to say, I was writing the same letter over and over again, and I love software, and I thought, this is the perfect job for software. And so fast forward almost 6 years now, and we've gone from one use case, parking tickets, to over 200 use cases today, all in the consumer rights field, like getting refunds from landlords, refunds from big companies, canceling subscriptions, all of the areas that a lawyer wouldn't want to get out of bed for. And I think what it shows is that disruption and entrepreneurship can come from any area. When I was starting my business, I approached a lot of lawyers and legal funds and all of this stuff, and they said, you're crazy, it would never work. But because I had my own personal experience, I could go around them. And being an entrepreneur for 6 years now, my mission is actually to help founders a few years earlier than me. So I'm invested in 100 founders now as an angel investor, and I help them tell the right story, get some revenue so they can go down other paths as well. I specialize in investing in high school and college dropouts. So I've probably given money to 50 of those types, and I tell them the right things to say because, unfortunately, if you know the right things to say, just like in the law, you can get capital versus if you say the wrong things, you can't, and it's all about packaging the deal. So, yeah.
I mean, that's... I think that's really inspiring. But maybe tell me a little bit more how you actually convinced others. Is it you just need to pursue your own idea and just don't listen to others because you're disrupting an industry? And as you said, many people tell you that it's not working. So how could you still stay convinced that what you're doing is actually the right thing?
So the hardest thing when starting a business is getting your first customer. But if you build a solution for yourself, which is what I did, you've already got one customer guaranteed. And so we see all these entrepreneurs, they do things, especially in like the crypto space, they're doing it just because it's the hype thing to do. But I strongly believe solving your own problem can get you the momentum you need. And what all the investors want to see is that momentum. And if you say, I'm building for myself and my friends, and I've already got some customers, that can help you a lot to kind of package the story.
Now, you have actually a personal relationship with all the ones you're investing in. Maybe, Michele, you are investing quite some money in a lot of startups. Do you want to have that type of personal relationship, or is it do you know them, or how you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, look, we built a solution to scale so that founders have alternatives, right? I think it's like really amazing if I have you in your network. You can show me how to go and fundraise. But there are like truly millions of entrepreneurs that don't have the right people in their network. And so we've always called our product the 20-minute term sheet, meaning you can come connect to the data that runs your business, and within 20 minutes we can tell you this is the amount of capital we can give you in that terms. And so it's not, we're not anti-VC. If you want to go raise venture capital, we encourage you to do that. You could take half the dilution, you could find the right partner, but there's also a downside of having investors, right? They're there for a long time, and they're going to be probably pretty vocal in how you run your business. And I think there is a meaningful swath of entrepreneurs that want to be able to build on their own terms, because you're going to do all the work as a founder. And so our solution to that is that we've built a lot of automated digital tools, because when I go to my VCs, they can tell me the stories of 20 other founders that are in their portfolio. What I can show you is I can show you how, ad prices are performing across Facebook, across 50,000 companies. So I could be like, so I can do a couple of things that give entrepreneurs insights and perspectives that I don't think they could get with a VC, because they're just very data-driven.
So how do you interact with the VCs? Are they your friends, or how do they perceive your solution?
depends on how progressive they are. So I think there's certainly a narrative where we're a great and a very fair competitor to VC that's more founder friendly. But that's 90% of the time VCs really love us because the founders are taking half the dilution. If you think about raising a Series A, if you need $10 million and you raise $5 million from Clearco, then you only are taking the dilution for the other $5 million, which is both preserving the founder's equity and it's preserving the investor's equity going forward. So we get a ton of referrals and work very, very closely with many, many VCs around the world.
How is it for you, Eva? Actually, you're a little bit more confrontative maybe, or disrupting the very core of the VC industry, saying, well, we can do deals better because through a technology like AI, we actually know much better the market and we do better decisions. How do others react?
Yeah, I think what Michele and I have in common is the general question of the product of venture capital, like the product of financing startups, of financing ideas, and the conviction that maybe the way it's been done in the past isn't the best or the only good way or not the best way, right? So I think from a founder perspective, like what we also try is really to allocate capital in very short amounts of time. So using technology and having efficient processes at place, right? Our team usually doesn't need to spend a lot of time in sourcing, whereas the average VC spends, I think, 40% of the time in sourcing. And we have technology looking at every digital footprint of entrepreneurial activity in Europe. So I get roughly 1,000 deals every month. And now I have a screening AI at heart that helps my investment team to really look only at the companies that have signals for outperformance, right, very early on. And that in a way that it's, well, we're trying to be as unbiased as possible. That would probably open up a complete new panel of how can we unbias or debias technology. But that being said, our purpose really is to offer capital to founders in a very lean and convincing way, so that we are not the VCs who go out there and say, have 6 weeks of conversations and after 6 weeks say, yeah, you're great, continue what you're doing, but you're a little bit too early for us, right? And then wasted a lot of time for them. And I think asking, how VCs usually react, I would totally agree with Michele. There's some that even invest in us. Some of our LPs, many of our LPs are GPs of larger funds. And then there's others that I think feel even personally attacked. But that's always when you try to disrupt a very manual industry, right? It's always very personal to some degree, because now you go in there and you say technology may help you make better decisions. And then venture capital itself is generally a high ego industry, so you might feel attacked sometimes.
Imagine that.
Exactly. But yeah, I think generally, we see more and more funds investing in technology, and I guess if we don't do it, other people will do it, and there's certainly more support.
How do you react there? Do you try to justify it or just ignore those?
No, I think, like we have data at hand. So like in simulations, I achieve 16x return rates, which is average, I think 11 times better than the average early stage VC. So in the end, it's about numbers, it's about performance. And then I don't try to, it's a little bit like religion, right? Some people may say gut feeling is the only thing. And other people will say, like, what we do is, okay, you have experience, you have intuition, but let's use technology to help us, like, make better decisions. It doesn't mean that I'm not involved anymore at all. But the question then is, I think the mindset must be, hey, I want to learn, I want to become better. And if that's not the mindset, I'm not trying to convince people, no.
Okay, cool. Using the technologies, what obviously also you're doing, Josh, how are the reactions of people? Well, maybe you can tell us a little bit of democratizing access to legal, what this actually means for people that are using these technologies.
So I guess whenever you democratize something like investing or law, the people who are being put out of business aren't going to be very happy with you. And so 90% of lawyers, they do great work, they go to court, and we're not trying to replace those. We're trying to replace the ones that you see on the billboards. And so we've had a lot of lawyers, they send us these nasty letters, they try and come after us, but we're lucky we have such a large proportion of the legal industry who care about access to justice that they support us, and so far we've survived. I think the one thing we all have in common is we're trying to replace large institutions. When I was first raising for my business, I had to go down Sand Hill Road and like pitch all these like old venture capitalists. But now you can just do it in 20 minutes on a computer or on Zoom with solo capitalists, which are individuals who are running these venture funds, or founders pitching me where they're texting on iMessage saying, I just dropped out. So technology is taking down institutions, and I think that's the one thing that it has in common across a lot of industries.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Maybe a question to you. You now built that type of VC or different approach to venture capital or to capital overall for e-commerce companies. Do you plan to scale that, or kind of where you want to apply it? Is it kind of disrupting the world now, or is it like focusing on specific technologies?
No, it's a good thing to think about. So we started the company in San Francisco. I was originally Canadian and saw a lot of demand. So we're like, if this works in the most developed venture capital ecosystem in the world, this is going to work many, many other places. So, hired a great woman who's here in the audience, Ruma. She helped us get into 10 countries last year. So we're going to be launching in Germany shortly. So international expansion was a big part of our vision, is to be able to do that. Everywhere, and then to be able to be more than just a capital provider with these founders, and really use a ton of insights and tools to give them kind of the competitive advantage to win that they might have typically got somewhere else, but at the same time be out of their way, right? We have no board seat, no control, and we have very minimal upside, right? So we're very incentivized to make our company successful.
And I think many of the audience here are also interested in what your plans are, Josh. Are you coming to Europe? Are you focusing on the US? And then, I mean, looking at the legal market, it's probably also a very hard market to then also expand. So maybe give us some insights into what you plan there.
So we're definitely coming to Europe. I originally started my business in England, moved to the US because the US is way more broken than in Europe. In Europe, you get the refunds for the flights automatically. In the US, you have to send a fax. So that's the difference.
Wow.
But we are expanding to Europe this year, and we're also doing more complicated legal disputes in the US. I imagine a world, not this year, but in a few years, where even for complicated court cases, you're representing yourself, and you have AirPods whispering in your ear, telling you what to say.
Nice.
Yeah, really looking forward. If that comes to Europe, I think that actually helps everybody to really, get access to high quality support. What about you? I mean, you're just starting. Do you look at a specific market, or you do see, okay, your technology is in a way powerful that you actually can expand that and rethink also how you actually do investment?
Yeah, so I think, like generally the question is like, how can we use technology to manage risk? And then one way is to diversify your portfolio and to generate access, what I just said beforehand, right? So with this first fund, we invest pre-seed. We're industry agnostic. We try not to limit ourselves so much, because if I see signals in 3 years or in 1 year from now that this is an industry that's growing, why should I, not invest into that industry? So I generally think our approach really is to be broad. And if I say I want to grant more access to capital to the diverse founders out there, and I say I only do fintech, that's sort of a contradiction, right, and a problem. So, that's one thing, and I think the second thing, pre-seed versus later stages for technology. When we started, the easiest thing to do would be to go in later stage, because later stage you have traction signals, you have hard KPIs, you have data really to use to see what is performance and to ditch the pitch, which Michele is also doing, and really only looking, for example, at performance. But then I can only look into the startups that have already been funded, and I do not change anything at the access point to this industry, right? And that's really what we want to do in the long term. And so we went into pre-seed first, to solve a problem that's very difficult to solve, right? How do you measure talent? How do you measure entrepreneurial talent and experience? How do you get experience in there and all of that? And we've spent 2 years on working on that, and it's never done. But the next steps then would be to raise an opportunity fund. Once this first fund is done, we're in the middle of fundraising, so still some work to do. And then also go in later stages after that.
Now, We heard in, I think, 2 or 3 sessions before this one that venture capitalists are driven by money, by returns. Now, you talk about democratizing access to capital. Honest question, what came first? Do you say, I can disrupt an industry because I can make more money than what's in there? Or you said, okay, there is something wrong. Some people should get money that don't get money, and let's see how we can fix that. And then you found a business model that actually makes maybe sense.
So it's very interconnected. The first thing we saw really was, okay, 84% of early stage VCs fail at delivering minimum expected returns. And there's so much money being spent, especially in the last 10, 15 years in venture capital. So there's such an inefficiency of capital allocation out there, and that is a problem, right? So I think this was really like performance or lacking performance was really the first motivation. And then once we digged into that, right, see like the, I mean, sometimes I say, and this is maybe a little bit harsh, but like the latest innovation in venture capital was like the World Wide Web when it comes to how do people really make their investment decisions. There's not really anything happening. And that being said, I think the question also is then how can we invest in a way that we decrease the bias in there. And if we believe that entrepreneurial talent is distributed equally, which is something I'm completely convinced of, right? When there's like 3 techies or 3 physicists sitting in Bayreuth and trying to, solve a problem and have a solution for that, but they're not the type of guys in terms of personality to, pitch to the typical VC, which is a very homogeneous pool of people, then they will maybe never get capital. And I think that is why it's so connected, right? Only if we grant access to all the great founders out there, we can really be profitable, and we will solve so much more problems that we have right now, because entrepreneurship obviously is the solution for many, many problems we have. So it's very connected to each other, I think.
Yeah, this is a distribution problem.
Absolutely.
There has been tons of great entrepreneurs, and I mean I can see like them in our portfolio all the time. Like ex-military veteran built a company that does murder mystery subscription boxes. Who would know? He didn't let like you get a box in your house, you can run a murder mystery party. I mean, how fun is that idea? Yeah. He went to pitch VCs, didn't know any. Today I think we funded him $10 million. He owns a $25 million business. That's not something to turn your nose up. Like that transformed his life for him and his family and his community around him. And so this is just, if you only stretch within communities, you only go so far. And so you have to build something that's way more data-driven. And then you can show those opportunities are out there, right? I mean, the narrative on women has been consistently, there's just not enough female founders. It's like, we didn't do any trying on the sourcing side. And we've backed 25 times more women than the venture capital industry average. And they're great companies. The standards do not change. It's just about finding them. So I think this is a distribution problem, which is an incredible opportunity to solve for the people that solve it, and also an incredible benefit for the world.
Is it actually that because we're now talking about investing in female founders also, are they out there and they just don't get access to market, or you say we actually also actively market for more women to become entrepreneurs?
We don't do any active marketing. We say we have a data-driven tool that allows you to get access to capital to grow your business and plug in your data, and we can see what we do. We've done nothing specific around groups of people, which kind of just shows you how powerful that could be. And if it was a small sample size, I would be like, okay, maybe that's not much, but I mean, we've deployed $4 billion. The U.S. venture capital industry deploys 23. So the fact that we're even like on that little pie chart, I think, is cool.
We're already over at the end of our session here. I thank you so much for being here, to giving us some insights into how it feels to disrupt an industry. Thanks again, and thank you, everyone.